Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Pan's Vale rework. A couple days ago, they ended up reworking a lot of stuff in Pan's Vale. This mainly affected a bunch of Wildfolk troops, as well as just the Kingdom of Pan's Vale in general. This was something they were going to do around August of last year, but they finally got around to it now. This has been something that they've done in the past, where they slowly go around to kingdoms and kind of rework the ones that aren't really doing that well. So hopefully they'll get around to Adana and several other kingdoms in the near future. A lot of them still need it. They've only done it to a few so far, but hopefully they'll do it a little bit more consistently into the future. But anyways, I'm going to be going over some of the changes with them, as well as doing some teams. If you want to see an absolute full change log of all the changes, the link will be in the description. I'm mainly just going over the most noteworthy one, and these being the most noteworthy 4. So, the Wild Queen, only change here. She now has a 22 green skull mix instead of a 16. This makes her ability a lot more consistent than it was before. It was pretty inconsistent before, probably is still a little bit towards the inconsistent side right now, but that's just how gem spawns are these days. But at least they'll be a little bit more capable of actually landing those extra turns, as long as you have a lot of green and or skulls on the board. Should be able to land them now. She has a pretty good combination in that she can steal attack, give it to your first slot, and then just skull spam. Not only does it make it so the enemy will most likely do very little damage, but you'll also be able to get a lot of damage output out. The main way that you use her is you generally throw the attack reduction onto the next in line, so that your skull spam kills whatever's first in line, and then that second in line that you reduced all the attack on, well, if they get any skulls or anything, they won't really be able to do much to you because you just stole a good majority of their attack. That's pretty much her whole premise, and it just gives it the first slot and allows you to just hit more damage. Well, Nessa probably has the most interesting change out of any of them. It is noteworthy to mention that she automatically has Empowered. She already had this. However, the interesting part is how they changed her ability. She now gives life to all allies instead of just herself. So yeah, you can basically just use this as an immediately HP buff right at the beginning of battle, and she just keeps doing relatively cheap HP buffs to your entire team. Not the best of methods to get your HP up, like Divinia, of course, and stuff like that would still be better. However, this is basically the best rush HP that you can really get if you're looking to get it across your entire team. Can't really think of anything that really uses a total team HP at the moment, though, that you would really need to utilize. Most things that do boost on HP or single troops end up specifically using it. But if we ever do need a really big HP buff immediately to the entire team, well, that's basically what she does now. And on top of that, she still has her previous ability where she just does basically a single target charm, in that whatever their attack is, it just does the damage to itself. And she still has purple link, so it gets the mana pretty quickly. But yeah, her mana cost was just increased from the, I believe, 8 that I had before up to that 12. Elwyn, a very small change here, or actually two. One is it no longer has Fey Slayer. It now has immune to, it now has Song of Light instead. It ends up creating a Yellow Storm at the start of battle. The most noteworthy thing that ended up changing with him is not really going to affect late game much, but if you are a newer player, the change that they made is very, very useful. You're probably going to want to go complete out the Pan's Vale Kingdom, because they end up increasing his boost ratio to a 7 times. This is the highest boost ratio that any kingdom troop currently has, making it basically the best early game troop in the game that is easily obtainable. All you have to do is complete out the Pan's Vale Kingdom, and boom, you own him. It's as simple as that, and you would also get the Bard Hero class while doing so, which is another benefit. That hero class is okay to use, definitely above average. But anyways, yeah, 7 times boost ratio per yellow that he kills. So let's say you end up hitting 7 yellows, that is 49 additional damage. And how much damage you would normally have in early game, that's about 60 total. That is quite a bit, because this will now replace basically be the alternative for Ranger. Ranger tends to get used a lot in early game, at least previous to this change, because Ranger had a really good boost ratio and just did a lot of damage. But now Elwyn will be for that purpose. Not only does it do about twice the amount of damage as a Ranger now, with how big his boost ratio is per yellow that he destroys, but he also ends up having some board control with the fact that he ends up destroying, which means he accumulates the mana, and it does it in a row and column, so you can end up doing a bunch of cascades with that. And yeah, you can just get a lot of mana and damage output simultaneously. Highly doubt this is really going to be used much in late game at all, but it's probably going to be one of the better options in the entire game for up to about level 100 or possibly up to level 200. If you're still early in the game, go do Pan's Vale, because he just got a gigantic buff. So much so that as far as the order that you would do kingdoms in, that just got boosted up a lot, the Pan's Vale Kingdom. Since he is an epic, it will be a little bit harder to get him from keys, but you can get him for free just from the quest line. So, Satyr Magician, I'm still not sure if this was a buff or a nerf. It's kind of hard to tell, but he deals damage to the first 2 enemies like he always does. But now, he silences the first 2 enemies, Previously, it would do a random 2 enemy, but now it is specifically the first 2. It also gets to steal 2 magic from both of them, whereas before it didn't do any of that. But, yeah, I'm not quite sure if this is a buff or not. Of course, we already had things like Corvash, Emperor Corvash, that could do a double up front. This basically means you can never use 2 of him onto a team, because the whole purpose of using 2 previously on a team was to try to get the entire team silenced pretty quickly as a cheap alternative. However, that's not really possible anymore. You would have to only use a maximum of 1. However, it is consistent and you will always know exactly what he's hitting. He will be silencing the first 2. So still not exactly sure if that's a buff or nerf, but at least you know a little bit more what he's going to be doing. So it's more consistent in that regard, but if you need a silence, obviously like 3rd or 4th, well, you're kind of out of luck and he will not be able to do that for you anymore. So it's a little bit of a mix of both a buff and a nerf simultaneously. So those are the main changes. Some other ones that are somewhat worth just mentioning real quick. King Salinas now gets to steal 1 magic from all 3 of his hits. This barely makes any difference, but given that he's already a decent troop doing to a half mana start, it's just making him slightly less useless. So he's always going to be somewhat useful just due to the final trait that he has. So at least now his ability is a little bit more up to par, even though that's a very small change. Bunny Donk, similarly, very small change. It now has Thick Skin instead of a bond to Beast, so it has a little bit more durability overall in most situations. It also has a 50% chance to devour Knights. Other than that, Satyr, they end up giving an okay buff. I still don't feel like the strip's really going to be used much, but it now has 75% mana start instead of whatever it had before, and it now also gets to steal 2 armor, assuming the enemy has the armor to steal. So a little bit better, makes it a little bit better than Goblin in some situations. However, more often than not, you're barely ever going to touch a strip, if ever. And Nax, they made it just a little bit easier to use by lowering its magic by 1. They also changed out one of its traits to give it a bunch of immunities, and that is about it. And as I mentioned, they also did a few other changes, though they're so trivial that they're not even really worth mentioning. Anyways, off to PvP. There are 3 teams I want to go show real quick, starting with a nice skull spam one. So, Wild Queen, she is a weird troop in that she could potentially be insanely good, though prior to this buff, she was pretty much too inconsistent. I still feel like that is the case, in that she's still too inconsistent to use. However, it did make it slightly more consistent, so I guess it's somewhat worth using now. Basically, the whole premise here of what we're doing right now is we're using Green Seer Giant Spider Loop in order to feed her mana and to give her the perfect board. We are using the Doomed Crossbow. If you do not own this, you can use Manghair instead. However, it does work better with the crossbow. And essentially what we're going to want to do here is make sure we constantly, forever, keep the board kept with blue, green, and purple, and technically skulls. Those are the 3 things we want to make sure stay on the board. And if he could ever end his turn with Infinite Goblin Loop, we can go and do exactly that. Let's see, will goblins get us? No, not today. Okay. So, let's see what we can do with this board. We could probably win off this board right now. So we'll convert all the browns to greens. That will give us all the mana that we need for that. Double check if we have this alignment, which we do not for an extra turn. So I guess we wait for now. I'll just go and pass some of my mana so we can throw a Green Seer. I'm going to want to throw this Green Seer before I cast the Wild Queen, just so we have a better board filled with greens. If we only have it on purple, it is actually worth denying out purple to do this. So exactly that, as it is so important to have that on the board. We now have alignment on that, so we'll just get a gigantic AoE into pretty much instant Doomskull kill. And I'll just drop that real quick. Actually, we'll take the brown to brown, get all that out. Get a bunch of mana accumulated. Do we go for this again? I want to get a Wild Queen down, but I do want to get a little bit more green. But then again, if I cast this, I'm almost going to reduce the amount of green on the board rather than add it. So much so, I'm actually just going to go for our attack steal here. So we'll just go for the one next in line. Pretty much how you always cast her is you go to the one next in line, because you'll end up killing whichever one is currently in first slot. And if you end up ending her turn because she misses, which she does, then you would they would do almost no damage to you, as you currently see. Anyways, purple, can we take anything here that's worth it? We can take it on blue. I do not want to take blue, however. Green, do you have anything? Again, we have it on blue. Do not want to take blue. However, we also have it on red. I guess that's a little bit better. Also a color I somewhat want to keep, at least so that gets full mana, but not that big a deal. Get rid of all of our browns there. Hopefully get another green seer just to set up the board a little bit better. It looks like we can take out brown. And then we can just go for the Wild Queen here. Should be good enough board, so let's go for that. Don't get to steal on the attack because it's entangled, but it's already dead, as you can see. So there's a little skull spam option that you can end up using with it. Hey, we get an arcane from it. Okay, on to 2 other teams. One cheaper team and one, what was it? Let's see. Oh yeah, one was using 4 times Wildfolk. So we'll go show the 4 times Wildfolk, and then we'll go show the cheaper one. So, will you ever really use this team? I don't think so. 4 times Wildfolk, as far as the team is concerned, it's always been kind of average for the most part. It does get buffed quite a bit by the fact that it has a pretty good hero class. Bard is definitely above average, as I mentioned before. You end up getting it from Pan's Veil. It ends up giving all yellow troops 1 stat per turn to everything. And also has a decent amount of other perks that end up making it decent, like the whole entirety of the Arcane Tree, mainly, with all the benefits that ends up bringing. But anyways, the only thing that specifically got buffed from this team is actually King Salinas, oddly enough. But anytime that Wild Folks get buffed, it's a buff to King Salinas, technically. So, still a buff for him overall. But we'll go through a hit on there. He does still get to steal more magic every single hit now, so that's a little bit beneficial, and that we can just keep backing damage higher and higher, which is, of course, helpful. We'll do that. We can then just get an AoE down and kill a good majority of it, then just throw this down. Actually, I might first. I'll go get that. Of course, it's one of the more recent mythic sides of the game. You don't necessarily need to run that. You could also just run it with Dawnbringer and use something else for the use the Satire instead, and just use the double silence. Go down that route. But I figured we'd throw him down. He does have a few stuns, does get a little bit of a benefit, and of course, starting with half mana start is pretty beneficial, since you can just get that straight off of King Salinas and only require 12 mana, which isn't that much. Typical for battles here are really easy battles, so we'll re-pick into something that's a real battle. Hey, a Zugoff. Well, that's real. Oh no. Never mind, maybe I should take a weak battle. Our next one is the low-level team. This is something that you can run if you just want to run some of the newer changes stuffed with the that are easy to obtain. Here's this Mang with Titan, pretty standard. The Satire Magician for the double silence on front, as well as the magic steal that it has. Monkey Disciple is here just for HP gain. He didn't get any change, but useful. And here just for the additional HP gain off of Fawn Nessa. Probably take a battle a little bit weaker than that if we're going to be using this team. Let's take that one. That should be fine. Anyways, first thing we'll want to do is get Mang to full mana off our Titan. Probably do it with a Browns because it's Titan. We can go for our HP buff immediately if we want to. Keep in mind that does end our turn, however. So careful with that. So this we'll end up using. Still fully not sure yet if that is a buff or not, but yeah, it is a little bit more consistent. You'll know exactly what it hits every single time, so there's no speculation with it. However, if we cast it again, there's no chance it will silence the other two. We know for sure it'll silence those, so I don't know. It could be somewhat useful in some situations, somewhat not as useful in others. It's kind of weird. Basic bottom line is you'll never actually use more than one of him on a team ever. That is one thing that has completely changed with him that will never be applicable again. We'll throw that down. As you can see, we get a gigantic HP buff for that, and basically we just keep stacking HP. The typing of Wildfolk does have quite a bit of HP gains that they can end up utilizing now, even more so than before. So yeah, that makes for a pretty nice option. Fortunately, it doesn't really have anything that boosts well off of HP, but still, they get to survive quite a while. Nothing else. And he didn't go for that skull there, but he also ended up denying it from us. I could try manging him, but that's not going to be enough damage there. But let's see. Give us a skull. Still doesn't. Still doesn't. Okay, we'll throw down Mang, and then any poke will kill it from there. No matter what we get onto it. Get that last hit? No, we did not get a surge. Not even going to give us a skull either. Fine, we'll try for a Sky Skull. Had 2 chances, got neither. It still doesn't go for the skulls, and it just gives us one. But there we go. But anyways, that's pretty much all the changes with the Wildfolk. Of course, as I mentioned, there was a few other ones. If you do want to see the full changelog, the link will be in the description as well as in the comments below. Anyways, if you still have any other questions, feel free to also leave it in the comment section below. And I will see y'all later. Thank you all so much for watching. Goodbye, everyone.